You're listening to The People's Pitch, the official podcast of Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by footballstadiumprints.com. Let's start the show.
And as I talked about just a couple minutes ago, as Joe Watt stands over this one, he appears to be the one taking the penalty here. This is a huge confidence booster if you're Duluth.
Worst case scenario for City right here.
And it stopped!
Yes!
And it stopped!
Totally redeems himself.
Matt Elder redeeming himself. Oliver with the right foot. The shot of the goal!
Oliver!
Justin Oliver will break the scoreless tie. And it is 1-0 Minneapolis City. Is Hutton now on the offense with the left foot. And it is now 2-0 Minneapolis City.
Good finish.
Nick Hutton taking his quick victory lap.
Happy Independence Day, Crows fans. This is the People's Pitch Podcast, the official podcast of your Minneapolis City Soccer Club. I am your host, John, and today is going to be a light one from a content volume perspective as Nate is out this week. I don't know where he is, to be honest with you. He's just not here. And I am solo, but it's been a while since we did this, and I pretend to feel that this doesn't take a toll on me being without Nate. Half of the heartbeat is gone, but I'm up for the task. We have a few bits to cover off today. The USL2 side rebounded after the Bavarian loss to put in a complete performance against Rochester FC. We have a small but mighty preview of the trip to Canada this weekend and the Super Cup. It's back. The Little Loons making their way to the friendly confines of Edor Nelson Field on July 7th. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And there is a super fun event happening next week. We have two guests on. I said I was going to be solo, but apparently I'm not. We're going to have two guests on to talk about it. And then finally, the U19s continued their rise this season. The Future Boys doing what they can to qualify for the playoffs on the back of a really big win. So without further ado, let's get this solo party started. Coming off the worst defeat in the Oliver era, Justin Oliver era, a 4-0 loss to the Milwaukee Bavarians a week prior. Some home cooking was really what the Crows needed, in my opinion, as a familiar face came into Edor Nelson Field last Saturday night, and that was the Rochester FC Other Loons, I think is what Dan Hoedeman called them on our broadcast. But they're the Loons. Odd, I know. It was the third meeting for both teams, excuse me, and one that saw both teams being at the bottom of the table and locking horns to really see who was going to be the one that got the dominance to push the other one further down into the bottom half of the table. So going for the Crows on the night. In goal, Evan Siefkin. Across the back line, he had pretty much an unchanged Curtis Wagner and the Kent brothers. Central midfield-wise, this is where the changes kind of came back into the mix. Jonah Garcia came back into the fold after being away from the team for a little bit. And then Ryan Keefe moving up from that center back spot into central defensive midfield role, which I thought he played really, really well in that spot against the Bavarians, even though the scoreline is what it was. But Ryan Keefe slotted in there. Then your attacking center midfielder was Eli Goldman. And then across the front line, you had Morgan Olson, Misael Harris, and Hakeem Morgan as your attackers. And then ultimately joined by player to watch on the day, number 18, Joe Highfield, the Wyzetta product and Portland University product, making the start up top with Hakeem Morgan. From a sub perspective, you had Daniel Sessler, Joey Tawa, Jamison Charles, Juan Moreno, Henry Tophoven, Bernard Asibi-Rule, and Scotty Heinen. So how'd this one go? First half wise, Crows came out red hot out of the gate. With their patented Oliver high pressure, it caused fits for the Loons early, seeing second and third ball opportunities in abundance for the Crows. A lot of chances for the Crows to kind of come in underneath of the direct passes that were coming into a very active, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, partnership of Joe Highfield and Hakeem Morgan. Rochester kind of countered that style of play with adding a second attacker up top, which they had not done in the previous two meetings. I think it was a tactic where they were trying to match the height of the big Crows backline. I mean, that backline goes 6 foot plus across the board. And then you add in Ryan Keefe from a central defensive midfielder perspective, shadowing that backline or providing the shadow for the backline in front of them. And that's a lot of height for an attacking group that didn't have a ton of size outside of maybe Ferris Kolick coming on spot duty in the first two matchups. But anyways, that's what they did. They countered it, and that in turn saw lumping balls directly at that back line in volume early on. And we'll talk a little bit in a bit about what we saw there. with how that worked out. Morgan Olsen was deployed on the right wing and had just a field day in the first half. He was taking on players in volume. He was just disposing of defenders on the flank. However, which way or another, I think he probably picked up at least $3 fines for nutmegs, but he was very tricky on the ball and provided numerous and very dangerous services into the box. But the Crows didn't really see him connect to any of his friends inside that box. Some narrow chances that we saw on the back post, but either way was causing fits for that Loons back line, and that included goalkeeper Michelossi on the day. The partnership, from a partnership perspective, player to watch, like I mentioned, Joe Highfield and Hakeem Morgan up top, they were extremely lively. So we didn't necessarily see what we saw previously in a few of the matchups, the Bavarians game in particular, where we had two attackers up high. I know that what comes into play there is Coach Oliver did have a game plan that was different from one game to the next, but what we did see is a lot of stagnant activity up top for our attackers, where maybe against the Bavarians they were told to stay higher in order to win the first ball, knock down, and have the attacking players underneath them coming in from the second ball perspective. That could have been the plan, but on the day today, you saw Joe Highfield occupying space, checking back, and Hakeem Morgan filling that space going forward. Or the inverse. You saw Hakeem doing what he does best, tracking back, trying to find the ball on its foot, and then Joe occupying that space in behind. But man, it was always constant movement off the ball, and it was really great to see. And it caused a ton of problems for Rochester FC, trying to figure out who was going to be tracking which guy coming forward and who was going to be tracking ultimately the second run. In the 14th minute, 14th minute, a very confident Joe Highfield on the day. It looked like I don't know what he ate for breakfast that Saturday, but you might want to consider having that breakfast every day. He looked extremely active, and he took on 3 players, resulting in the game's first really true opportunity of massive substance, drawing a penalty kick that saw Eli Goldman step up to the spot and calmly tuck home the game's first goal. And look at us, for I think now 3 home games, scoring first, something that we haven't seen in a while. But with this Oliver pressing style, you're going to get those chances. We've talked ad nauseum about the fact that we're creating the chances, we're just not tucking them home. In this instance, Joe Highfield takes a guy on, creates a penalty. Yes, it wasn't through the run of play scoring a goal, but we were on the score sheet first. Awesome. Then the foul started, and so did the yellow cards, as Rochester FC was consistently interrupting any number of Crows attacks that saw the midfield carry the ball over the halfway line, really. And that was to the tune of 3 yellow cards for the away side before the break. That indicates to me, referee, I thought, very good on the day, did a really good job. I think primarily in position to make the calls and to understand that with the persistent fouling, you have to go to the book. And he was definitely willing to do that early on, which was great. In stoppage time, it was Eli Goldman again getting involved as he turned his defender, sending a low back post cross into a streaking Ryan Keefe, who willed the game's second goal into the net, putting him solely atop the team's goal scoring race for the season. And the Crows are up 2-0 at halftime with an extremely dominant performance. I think a complete team performance from the activity I mentioned, from the attackers, from the midfield getting connected with not only the attackers for second and third balls, but also the defensive line managing those direct long passes, not just clearing them out, but knocking them down into that midfield that was then between Keefe and Garcia, connected to the back line, and then ultimately starting the attack, whether it was through the wings or it was through direct passes into the front line, or it was finding Eli Goldman as that attacking center midfielder. So coming out of the break, second half, more of the same, honestly. Seeing both teams, I think, making slight shape adjustments, not a lot of personnel adjustments, but shape adjustments, trying to get an advantage. But it was the Crows that got it right, I think, over Rochester in their halftime adjustments. Consistent pressure, saw some turnovers continue to be created in good spots for the Crows, and with that came chances, but none landed, and the game seemed to be starving for that third and fourth goal that ended up ultimately never coming to the home side. The only really thing to note outside of that is that Rochester, who were already on 3 cautions, picked up 3 more cautions to bring their tally to 6 on the day, which ultimately saw defender Bo Drath bring his second yellow card, ultimately adding in the red flavor. in the 78th minute, forcing Rochester down to 10 men. The Crows at this point, I think, were totally content with closing up shop and did all the things right to secure a much needed 3 points. So final thoughts on this one. I mentioned the pairing up top, but I think I want to call it the mixture of all the attackers. Joe Highfield, Keem Morgan, Eli Goldman, and Morgan Olson, ultimately adding in some substitutions there. But the collective starting attacking group of all of those players I thought was really impressive on the day. Excuse me. It was not just that group that put in a quality shift. I think, like I mentioned, it was an entire team connection. It was, rebounding from that poor performance in Milwaukee, probably the poorest performance of the season, with a statement, and having that short memory and looking at having things like more energy. And yes, being at home helps that, but I think it was a really great rebound for the team, from the players to the coaching staff. And they followed the game. The players followed the game day plan by the coaching staff, and 3 points. We like to see those. Well, next up for Minneapolis City, coming up this weekend, the first of three meetings, in the 2020, seeing the 2023 league winners Thunder Bay Chill come into Minneapolis City. And I thought the Crows put together, in my opinion, a very complete game. It was probably the first complete game of the Oliver era, all the way back on June 5th with a 1-0 victory, which saw a first half goal by Ryan Keefe. Ultimately, like I said, he was putting together his goal scoring lead resume builder on that one, starting it off there and then ultimately completing it in the game I just talked about. But it was a complete performance against a very, very strong team. I mean, the Chill proved that they had restocked the talent pool to push for a consecutive league title. They brought back a really dynamic player in their danger man, Diego Reveco, who they went to early and often in that game, almost too much in my opinion. And then newcomer, former professional Canadian Premier League defender, McDonald Nibia, who was excellent. If you go back and watch it, I don't think there was a moment where I didn't loud praises directed toward Nibia. I mean, just a fantastic on the ball defender, a hulking defender. The guy's huge, and he did a really great job. But they ultimately, across the board, I thought they brought back another talented team, and do have what it takes to push for the title. And currently, I think they may sit on not league leading points, but league leading performance from a win-loss perspective, sitting up top. On that day, the Chill, they brought their best to the Crows, who, like I said, made a statement in that win, creating about 6 really good chances, only to find the back of the net that one time. But that was all it took to secure all 3 points in that first game and really setting the tone for the next 2 matchups between the 2 clubs. The second of 3 meetings will be this Friday, July 5th at 7 p.m. across the border in Thunder Bay. I don't necessarily have the details on any sort of stream, but they're a side that puts together a decent production. So keep an eye out on the socials for stream details for that one. And once again, that's Friday, July 5th at 7 p.m. in Thunder Bay. Shortly on the heels of that one, it's not the only game for the Crows USL2 side next week, or this weekend, however you want to slice it, as the Minnesota Super Cup action returns. This time, Crows facing Minnesota United FC's U19 MLS Next side as they return to face the Crows. As we know, the Crows took out Rochester FC to kick off the season and the Cup 2-1. But for the Loons, they disposed of Rochester FC as well with a 1-0 victory earlier in the Cup for 2024. This sets up a win, and you're in the final game for both these teams for the right to take on St. Croix Legends, who have already qualified on top of their group in the championship game. This one kicks off at Edor Nelson Field Saturday, July 7th at 6 p.m. Tickets are on sale now. Head on over to mplscitysc.com to get your entry into that one. And I think it's going to be a really fun end-to-end match. Last season, I thought it was a really great end-to-end match between the 2 sides. And ultimately, I was on the broadcast call for the final between Minnesota United and Med City. And it was a really great game. Really, really great game for both sides. But seeing this MLS Next side come in, yes, there's turnover every year, but there are some familiar names that are still on that roster that we'll see. as well as some new players. So we'll get a chance to see what the future of the local MLS side could potentially look like in having their 19th coming in. Calling all soccer fans and supporters of a great cause on July 12th. Minneapolis City wraps up its regular USL2 season versus the Thunder Bay Chill with a special event you will not want to miss, the Gene Party. And since Nate is away this week, I could not go a full show without having another voice to hear, or we would likely lose plenty of listeners. So I'm really excited today to welcome Scott Menk and Dan Hoedeman to help us unpack and promote this special event. Welcome to the show, fellas.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no problem. Dan, I think, you've been on here quite a bit, and people already know who you are. So we'll pass the mic over to Scott. Scott, how did you link up with the club? What's your role with the club? And we also ask all newcomers, so it's a loaded question. We ask all newcomers, what's your soccer journey? So anywhere you want to start within there.
Yeah, so I'll start with where I got connected to Minneapolis City. So I currently am the creative director at Twin Cities Orthopedics, and we are one of the sponsors of Minneapolis City, doing a lot of the care and medical support. So I got connected through Dan through that. We've had a couple of coffees, couple of happy hours, just really enjoyed our time. I invited Dan to my fall men's league team, which he's a really good CDM position for a 7-on-7 game, which I think was really great. And then we just kind of started talking, and then I started volunteering with Minneapolis City, doing a lot of like marketing and other creative things. So some of the jerseys, the Pride jerseys, something that I worked on with Dan, and some other things that we've kind of had cooking. And then obviously the Gene Party, which we're really excited to promote on July 12th, which is a nice little happy birthday to you as well, John. I heard that's your birthday on the 12th.
No, that's not my birthday. But
what? Okay.
It's actually January 18th, so you were definitely misinformed.
I was close. It started with the J in the month.
If it helps you remember, I share a birthday with both Tom Selleck and Kevin Costner, so that's pretty hard to forget.
And we've tried to get Tom Selleck as like the club celebrity fan for so long. My wife even wrote him a letter, but he never responded.
Well, why don't you dive into your soccer journey, since this is a soccer show?
Yeah, I grew up playing soccer, something that I'm really passionate about. A local club here called Dakota Rev, which is no longer in existence. I played there for until 9th grade, where I decided that I wanted to run track and play American football. So I did that for 4 years, didn't really go anywhere. And then I just really fell back in love with soccer when I played in college. Just went to Winona State, just did a lot of club action there. And then I started picking up men's league when I came back up to the cities. And it's just one of those things with camaraderie and people and watching and community that it's second to none. You don't really get that anywhere else. And so I just love being on the field, just hanging out with other people that also enjoy soccer. So really happy that I can kind of join this squad of Minneapolis City and be with other like-minded people that want to do cool things and want to kind of create and want to just talk and play and do anything around soccer.
Awesome. Well, now that we knocked out the soccer piece of it, let's dive into the Gene Party. So, Scott, this event has a personal story behind it for you. It's inspired by your son, Evan. Tell our listeners how the Gene Party came to be and how spinal muscular atrophy affects your son, Evan.
Yeah, so my youngest son, Evan, was diagnosed at birth with spinal muscular atrophy, also known as SMA, which affects how the spine and muscles communicate with each other. And over time, it would lead to death if it was untreated. So it's kind of a scary thing that kind of went through our head. However, through the great care team at Mesonic Childrens Hospital and all of the advanced research in genetics, our story is a success story. So shortly after he was diagnosed with birth, he was having some treatments, and then he got a gene therapy treatment in 2020, which basically saved his life. Fast forward 5 years from now, he's 5, running around, going to Minneapolis City games, playing soccer with his older brother, just really enjoying life. And it's just one of those things that you didn't really expect to happen to you. But we want to shed a light not only on Evan's story, but other things that Mesonic Childrens Hospital is also doing, and such a great thing that they're doing to the community, and especially in advanced genetics research. So that's why we're throwing a Gene Party. So we're trying to connect genes with genes. So we're asking everyone to come to the game on July 12th, wearing your best denim outfit in support of a great cause. And I can't be more excited to see everyone there.
Was Gene Simmons not available, Dan?
The idea came to me when a fan, I want to do a special shout out to Derek Swanson for texting at 6:05 p.m. today asking that same question. And I got to be honest, I didn't even think about it.
Well, I have a quick follow-up for you, Scott. For folks that aren't like super familiar with SMA, I'm sure there's a lot out there. Are there any long-term lasting effects that Evan might have, long-term with SMA?
So SMA currently with the gene therapy that he received with a drug called Spinraza, there is no long-term effects. However, he was I believe it was the 11th kid in Minnesota to actually receive the treatment in 2020, which spinal muscular atrophy affects 1 in 11,000 kids. Both parents are carriers. 1 in 4 people are carriers. Both parents have to be carriers in order to have an opportunity to have SMA to their kid, where basically they're missing a gene in their DNA structure that kind of talks to the spine and muscles. So long-term, right answer right now is we don't know. All signs are pointing to the fact that he should have a long, normal, typical life. But again, it's so relatively new, and such, it was only the second ever gene therapy ever approved by the FDA, which is kind of a fun little thing. So we just feel really fortunate that we were diagnosed 5 days after he was born. We were able to get on a treatment right away. So he didn't lose any of the neurons or anything that was happening for muscle function. So SMA over time, your muscles basically deplete, losing the function to walk, stand, run, and even swallow and breathe. So it's a relatively scary thing, but through science, it's pretty amazing how they basically give this one drug that basically tricks your brain into thinking you have this gene when you don't. And so, it's really a miracle. We feel really blessed in all ways. And that's why we wanted to give back. And that's where, when we floated this idea originally to Dan in our marketing meeting, one, we love puns. So the Gene Party is a great pun. And how can we get people to celebrate the kind of these successes and things that we're doing and giving back into the community?
All right, Dan. So now I have a serious question. No more Gene Simmons questions for you. So city's known for its community involvement. I mean, I myself have also been part of many of the things we've done to give back, and the Gene Party is a prime example of that community engagement. It raises funds for the advanced gene therapy at Mesonic Childrens Hospital to help those battling SMA, like Evan. What makes it so important to the club to give back?
Well, I think there are two elements to it, and the first one came just from the founding of the club itself. As you know, where we had this idea that we could create something that wasn't this corporatized, profit maximizing type of machine, and that instead we could use this sport that we loved to help our community and to elevate kind of these stories of cool things that are happening in Minnesota, whether that's players or fans creating community. And in this case, what a cool thing! Right across Riverside Avenue from our stadium is this cutting edge gene therapy. And Scott had told me when he's telling the story that Evan had been in the Dakotas or Iowa or Wisconsin. At the time, they didn't have this available. They had it only available here. And what a testament to great things that are happening right here in Minnesota and right here in our neighborhood. And we should tell that story. It's part of the DNA of the club. We elevate the great things that are happening and the great things that people are doing. So it felt like such a natural thing, even though it wasn't specifically soccer related. And so we really wanted to do that. And then I think the second part of it is, if you look over the years, we've had so many people who've been impacted by Mesonic Children's. And Scott told his story, but we all remember, I'm sure, that first undefeated campaign that we did, which ended up becoming kind of a funny joke when he got kicked out of the Open Cup. But it was really about one of our interns, Christian Evans, who had cancer and beat cancer, with the help of Mesonic Children. And then we found out Tyler Birschbach, who runs our streaming broadcast, is a producer for that he was in a similar situation with Mesonic, and then all these stories. And so it felt like we were so tightly knit specifically to what that Hospital, and the care teams there, and all the good people there were doing that. When Scott came forward with this story, and as a parent, what a powerful thing. This is a great opportunity for us to kind of like lean into the fact that there is this bigger community that Masonic helps. It's tied in with our community, and if we can give back to that, like, let's do it. Because we don't have to worry about squeezing every last dollar out of everything we do. We don't have some management consultant telling us lower costs and raise revenues and maximize the lifetime value. Nope, we don't have to do that. And so we're not. And so we're going to do something good instead, and we're going to do something that, hopefully is really, really meaningful to the people who matter to us the most.
Sure. So the club's been super creative in pretty much everything it does, from these events, from jerseys, T-shirts, the Twitter feed, wherever your connection point is to the club. What types of things do we have cooked up to get people interested in the event to generate funds?
Well, there's a lot of fun stuff. And I think it probably starts with the pun, which was Scott's idea, because one, it's going to be fun to break out your jorts or your jean vest or anything you got, because at halftime of the game we're going to set a world record. John, for real, we are going to do it for the most people wearing denim taking a selfie. So don't leave your seat right away at halftime. Let's get in that selfie. We think if we got 1,200 people, which is a just about full Theodore Nelson field, that we're going to set the record, and hopefully let's really blow it out of the water. If it feels a little bit hot for denim, that's okay, because we have our Jean Party jerseys. They actually just arrived from Stimulus today. They're sitting on my doorstep, and the team's going to be wearing them. We're going to be selling them, and the proceeds of that are going to go and be donated to Mesonic. And then also all our ticket revenue. We've been really lucky that we've got a number of sponsors who've stepped up. We still do have room for more to really make a difference, to help support the cost for the event, the game, and all that's around it. And then our pre-party at 5 o'clock. So the game kicks off at 7 on Friday. We're going to do the pre-party at 5. We've got DJ Andy Delane, John, which nice. I know you're going to be pumped about. Some games, a silent auction where we're going to be able to donate the proceeds from that. So whether it's tickets, the jerseys, the silent auction, or donate directly, there are a ton of great ways to give. And turn up early, get some food from the food truck, listen to DJ Andy spinning, play some cornhole. Like it should really be a blast, and it should be really great, like midsummer thing to do, and do something good while having fun.
You mentioned donating. Are there any other ways outside of what you mentioned, in particular, that people who maybe aren't attending the game can connect up with to support the great cause?
Yeah, I mean, buy a jersey because you're going to look good and feel good in it. But also, if you want to donate directly, if you go to mplscitysc.com/Gene, Gene, Jean Party, all one word, you can donate directly right there.
Perfect. Well, the Jean Party is all about fun with a purpose. Join us at Theodore Nelson Field on July 12th. If you weren't paying attention to Dan at all, I'll fill you in. The festivities kick off at 5 p.m. with a pregame tailgate, followed by that includes, actually his name's DJ Drew Dandy, just in case you're wondering. With DJ Drew Dandy, there's going to be some food trucks. Follow that by an important match for the Crows, their swan song to the regular season at 7 p.m. against the Thunder Bay Chill. Halftime, then you'll get ready to break that world record for the most people in a denim-filled selfie. And to top it all off, we'll be heading to the corner bar for a post-game party afterwards. So a fantastic way to support a really great cause and watch some really great soccer. We hope to see you all there. And a big thank you to Scott Menk and Dan Hoedeman for sharing their story and promoting this Jean Party. Appreciate your time, fellows. Really looking forward to this one.
Thank you. I can't wait to see you guys in your best denim outfit.
In more good club news, we briefly mentioned it last week. The Futures U19s did what it took to finish, I think, an early opportunity for this new programming option in the club, seeing that this U19's first season. But they finished the year out with a 5-0 record in their last 5 games, regular season games, that is, with a dominant win versus a very dangerous St. Paul SC side. And we talked about that last week. final score line was 6-2, or excuse me, 6-3 to lock in that playoff spot. They did not know what seed they would actually have at the time of that victory, but it was all ironed out over the weekend as Valora 2, a mid-table squad in the UPSL Midwest West Division 1, shocked the second in the table team at the time, Joy Athletic, to vault the Crows into the second place in the league and the second seed in the season-ending tournament. And this also sets up the second, I guess it's a game of seconds, the second meeting at Edor Nelson Field for the Young Crows and Joy Athletic. And that game is on July 10th. Time and location still TBD. I think it's going to be Edor Nelson Field, but don't hold me to that. Logistics, they're hard. But keep an eye out for details on that one. And in the first matchup, it was a very good, eye-opening experience for Coach Scotty Heinen and the U19s, understanding what it actually takes to play in this league and this type of competition, with the majority of that roster being made up of, and there's no other way to put it, youth soccer players that are getting their first taste at more higher advanced soccer. And I thought they did well. Joy did throw the kitchen sink at them, bringing on a player in Akale who's now playing in higher levels of the USL. So that's a tough one for maybe a 16-year-old to play against a pro soccer player. But hey, they did a great job. And like I said, it set the tone for what we would see into the end half of the season. And we talked about the rise of this club and of this team within our club, and they're just doing everything it takes. They're playing really great soccer. They're lively on the ball. They're relentless defensively, and they're doing just a fantastic job. So we should all get out for this one. It's a chance for us to not only see the future of the club and honestly get to see how great these players are, but to continue that rise as a group. They look to go 6-0 in their last 6 and put them in another cup final for the club, which is extremely awesome to see in the first season under Coach Heinen. And honestly, last point on this one, changing that draw against Bateau, which should have been 3 points for the Crows, could have been the difference, along with another early draw that they had in the regular season. I think you change those two and you start to see another trophy for the regular season championship for the Futures program, which has been successful from the jump, no matter what level it is, in the Premier Division or in Division 1. And what a great way to start out that programming option for the club, then getting themselves into the playoffs and continuing to build off week on and week in and week out and get themselves into position to bring home another trophy. So once again, that game is going to be on July 10th. Time and location TBD. And that will do it for this week's show. Like I said, it was going to be a quick one because I'm here by myself. But I want to thank our wonderful show sponsor, FootballStadiumPrints.com. Our friends at FootballStadiumPrints.com are always expanding their soccer-focused t-shirt designs, prints, and more. Don't forget to use the code CROWS10, that's CROWS10, for 10% off everything you buy. And remember, all orders ship right from the United States, so no pesky international shipping charges. And as a reminder, Minneapolis City is a 501c3, so feel good that your membership and all the things you purchase from the club double as a charitable donation to a club that loves to do good. Memberships are no longer on sale, but hey, might as well start putting those pennies away for next season so you can get all that sweet swag and you can get a voice in what the club does. Head on over to mplscitysc.com and we'll let you know when to head over there to get tickets. Season tickets, that is. And that's all for this week's show. Wait, I messed up. Remember, you can always find us on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, at The People's Pitch, and now on Instagram, at People's Pitch Podcast, and you can even email us. It's been a while since we saw one of those. mcscpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, you can always connect with the club on Twitter, X, at MPLSCitySC. And now, that's all for this week. I'm John. That was Scott Menk and Dan Hoedeman covering the Gene Party. Can't wait for that to happen. And there's a lot of soccer coming up to close the 2024 season. We'll also get Nate back, but you can go out, support these players. And of course, get out to that Gene Party and support all the great things that are going on at the Mesonic Childrens Hospital. And we end it always, if you got hooked.